What's going on, everyone? This is the random dude, Josh, and we are here for a new episode of Cinema Crusaders. Joining me today is my good friend and buddy, Lance. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing pretty good.
Awesome.
Ready to rock.
Yeah. Time of this recording, it's leap year, so, haven't seen this day in, 4 years, so kind of cool.
Yes. Yeah, that is cool. It's like a special day, an extra podcast.
Exactly. An extra podcast for an extra day that will only happen once every 4 years. Love it.
Yes, that's special.
Very much so. Unfortunately, David, Nemesis Howard, is not with us. He is attending to some family stuff, so he will be back next episode and all of that. So make sure, I'm not going to get in depth about it, but any positive vibes you can send his way, please do so.
Exactly.
So, just as a follow-up from our previous episode, we ran a poll on Twitter to see what each and every one of you thought about the Boondock Saints and whether you loved it or if it was a hard pass. And to be honest, I was actually surprised at the number of votes that we got. So we had 20 total votes on this poll. Now, Lance, what do you think Boondock Saints, how do you think it did?
I think it still has that on the surface cult status. I think it leaned towards the people loved it.
Mm-hmm. And it did. We had a 60% love it and a 40% hard pass, which is exactly where I expected it to be. As far as that cult following, as you mentioned, really came out.
Yeah. I figured that's about right.
Yeah. So definitely kind of a cool thing that we're doing now, and we'll do the same thing for the movie we're talking about today. So make sure to go to Twitter at Cinema Crusaders and vote and let us know what you think as well. But today we are talking about another classic. I'm not even going to put cult classic. It is a pure classic, in kind of a response to the passing of the late Kirk Douglas. We're talking about 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. This was made back in 1955. Produced
54.
Oh, it was 54. Oh, okay. Oh, it was so many years ago. I wasn't even born then.
I know this is pretty retro. This is a massive blast from the past.
Oh, it is. You know what was funny? For whatever reason, unbeknownst to me, I did not realize that this was made by Disney.
You did not?
I did not. Don't ask me what rock I was. This is actually the first time I'd ever watched it. I'd seen clips here and there, but I had never actually sat through it from start to finish. So, and I believe I had mentioned that on the last show, and I thought you were going to oust me from the podcast when I mentioned that.
Okay, yeah. I guess I found it hard to believe, but,
Well, it's... I can say I've seen it now, so I'll be able to provide a fresh take or a review on it. So
excellent.
But just a brief synopsis about 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. This is the screen adaptation from one of Jules Verne's classic books. Funny enough, this is also the one that Dr. Emmett Brown really connected with when he met Clara in Back to the Future Part 3. They actually talk about this book.
Yeah.
But the premise of the book is there is a giant monster, if you will, that has been taking ships down left and right. And a submarine has been sent to investigate what's going on with these various sinking of these ships. The and I may pronounce it wrong. Like I said, I just saw this. The Nautilus.
Yeah, the Nautilus.
Okay, which I have to admit, the Nautilus is pretty cool.
Oh yeah,
and we'll definitely get into that. And really, it's just their adventures trying to find this monster and all of that. So, huge movie, especially for when it came out. But we'll jump into kind of the first part. Lance, what do you think? What are your thoughts about the writing and the production of this film?
This is an amazing film for its time. In 1954, it was Disney's first foray into live action. I mean, they had done a little bit of live action, and Disney had already been firmly established with its animated studios. But his ambition was to get this film to the big screen, live action 100%. So it was kind of like, if you want to equate it in my mind, I mean, this is before, Disney's the monster that it is now. Mm-hmm. Disneyland was being built at the same time they were producing this movie. So the movie was a really big risk. It could have totally, no pun intended, it could have sunk the studio if it didn't work. Mm-hmm. And everything was thrown into this movie. I mean, it was CinemaScope. It was on location. It was underwater. Massive sets were built. Studios were rented all over Hollywood. This was a make or break movie for Disney. So, having said that, it had the utmost quality for its time, and you can see it reflected in its production value. Of course, the source material is always great. The screenplay, it was Disneyed up a little bit. A little bit of they threw a song in there.
Such a classic song.
Yeah, Kirk Douglas singing, which was ridiculous but fun. Mm-hmm. How they kind of rationalize or personalize Captain Nemo and his torment. The whole idea of the superpower that he holds in the Nautilus. I think in the book it was more electricity propelled, and the movie he kind of alludes to kind of an atomic power that humanity isn't ready for. Mm-hmm. And I guess the time frame we should establish is like 1860s, 1868, I believe, mm-hmm. is when the story takes place. So it's like really ahead of its time, or Nemo is ahead of its time. And his grudge being that, him being a political prisoner or scientific prisoner, being tortured for his knowledge and losing his family because of that. That's why he goes on this killing spree, if you will. Of sinking merchant ships that are either housing like weapons or transporting weapons, or they're military ships. And governments get angry, so that's why they send out a special ship with harpoonists to get the so-called sea monster, not knowing that it's an actual submarine. So I like the adaptation. The book reads more like a Jacques Cousteau manual. Mm-hmm. It's kind of cool how it's doesn't really have a through line in the story. It's just like these adventures and theoretical ideas of what under the sea is like. Whereas now in the movie, because we have real submarine technology of the time, 1954, and we were able to explore the ocean a little bit better, just a little bit, not a lot. It was enough to bring a lot of legitimacy to the underwater sequences to the movie and the life beneath the sea. It's a really cool adaptation. I think it was written extremely well with great dialogue, well paced. This is a true classic. I mean, Earl Felton, the screenplay that he came up with was spot on, if you ask me. I mean, this is a movie to look at for good structure, for writing. And they didn't, it was still kind of like an independent, if you will. It kind of, once again, if I have to equate it to something modern, remember when Iron Man came out and Marvel was still like a boutique film studio, and Iron Man was kind of like that independent Marvel movie, and before Disney came in and changed everything. This is what it reminds me of back then. This was like the catalyst of like the super blockbuster movie. This, I mean, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea was the Star Wars of the 50s.
I would agree. That I think that's a very fair and spot on. It really is.
Yeah, I mean, this was huge, and it was a success. You know, it was a big gamble for Disney, and it all played out perfectly. The CinemaScope is beautiful. The underwater footage is amazing for its time. Production value is excellent. The story is spot on. It's a great adaptation. This is the model to which 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea should be measured at. So once again, it'll be hard to do this movie again without mucking it up with CGI and all the modern stuff. But spot on story.
So you had mentioned CinemaScope, and what for someone who isn't into filmmaking, what is CinemaScope? Just so that way our audience has an idea of what that is, because that was something that I noticed in the trailer. Was, you know, that it was shot using CinemaScope, and I initially thought, okay, what is that? You know, I had to look it up.
Yeah, it's the camera, it's the film, particularly the anamorphically squeezed lens to give it the aspect ratio of 2:3:5:1, that really wicked widescreen.
Okay. And
also, you'd have to have an adapter for certain movie theaters to play in CinemaScope. Way back in the day. A very, very big, heavy camera to move around, very difficult to maneuver, and to shoot underwater too, which is just a ridiculous concept, but they were able to pull it off. And they say that 20,000 Leagues was the second movie to use CinemaScope. I think it's the second gigantic commercial movie, I think, after The Robe. I think The Robe 1953 was CinemaScope. So this was just new technology. This was brand new technology to give you that awesome wide screen with great imagery. You know, the glass on the lenses were fantastic. So everything is going to be rich and saturated and beautiful looking. And it stands up to today. I mean, that movie is a painting. You look at every shot of that movie and it's a pure painting.
Well, and there were some scenes where the background were literal paintings.
Yes, they employed glass paintings like Star Wars had done and stuff. I mean, they had animators on their side. They had the Disney crew on their side for that. So that's a win-win situation. And the glass paintings were just spot on, amazing. Plus the rear projection. No blue screen, no green screen. They actually filmed everything and then rear projected it when they're looking through windows, or they're looking out the windows of the Nautilus or the ships. Everything is just real time. It's happening.
Yeah.
You know, there's no optics to it other than it's being filmed as you're watching it. Excellent techniques that were tried and true of the day, and they look great.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. As I was watching through this, you know, I kept in mind, okay, I have to remember the time period that it was made.
Yeah.
Because in this day and age, we have that mindset of, oh, this is how movies are supposed to be. I mean, you look at all the Marvel movies. And to go into this movie with that mentality means I am not giving this an honest shot. Now, as I was going through, now I've never read 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, so I didn't know the premise of the story going in. From a storytelling, I fully agree that the pacing of the story was perfect. At no point did I feel that it was slow or lagging. I think that's one thing that Walt Disney has done very well in all the movies that he had hit direct hand in. He always found stories that had that pacing. And that was his biggest thing. He wanted to tell stories. He wanted to bring these stories to life. One of the things I loved, and it's a minor sort of nuance of Walt Disney, but at the beginning of the movie, them showing the actual book of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Yeah.
I don't know why that little thing has always struck a very happy chord with me. I mean, they did it with Winnie the Pooh.
Right.
But just stuff like that is fantastic. Captain Nemo, I almost said Captain Nimoy there for a second, but Captain Nemo, James Mason's performance, wow. What a fantastic actor.
He's the quintessential Captain Nemo. You can't think of a Captain Nemo without thinking of James Mason. It is mind-boggling how that can happen all these years later. I mean, he is Captain Nemo. Mm-hmm. He had the stature, he had that voice, Captain Nemo. It just, everything was like, oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. Well, and even Kirk Douglas.
Oh yeah,
fantastic. I love the sets, and we'll get into the squid fight later because there's a lot around that particular scene that I want to touch on. But just the way that they designed the submarine, definitely ahead of its time. And I think the biggest thing I appreciated as far as production value goes is, and you had mentioned this, that it was shot real time. It is not overly, there was no CGI.
No.
Any quote unquote special effects was animated. And as you had mentioned, because they had the power of Disney animation behind it. But that is all real. Even, the squid, everything with the submarine. Those are special effects, but they're physical effects made by man to make something that is not real be real.
Mm-hmm. Classic. Absolutely
classic. No, I fully agree. It was fantastic. Now, have you actually read the book 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea?
Yeah, I read it many years ago.
Okay. So having read the book and then comparing this, would you say that what Earl Felton, because you had mentioned it briefly, but would you say that it is accurate to the book as we know it, with obviously some, we'll say, a plus or minus leeway to make it a little more relevant?
I'd say it's a plus to make it a little bit more cinematic.
Okay.
A plus to make it more cinematic. But it's definitely worth exploring. The book is definitely worth exploring. But what I also like too is that in it being Disney, you would think they would have, but they didn't in the film. They didn't throw in anything overly silly. The seal was not in the book. But it was funny comic relief.
I did enjoy the seal.
It was amazing. But they didn't throw in a little kid or throw in an actress to give her cheesy lines just to have a woman in the film. They didn't do anything overtly blatant to make it more commercial. They just used the book as source material, and you have to pace it out like a movie and all that, screenplays, acts, structures, all that. And I think it worked out great. This movie is an excellent case study to the book. Now, there's always the tired argument, the book's always better than the movie. And in a sense, I think this movie rivals the book, without a doubt.
So would it be safe to say that to maybe appreciate the book more, to obviously watch the film and then read the book, but have the mental image of these characters as you're reading the book? So then you're able to paint the picture in your mind as you're reading it.
Psychologically, I think it just happens.
I agree. It happened to me with Harry Potter.
Yeah, and the same with like Planet of the Apes. I watched all the Planet of the Apes movies as a kid, and then when I finally read the books, I can't get Charlton Heston out of my mind. I can't get Cornelius out of my mind. It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And this is one of those movies that'll do it to you.
And I'm totally cool with that. Absolutely fine with that. The other thing that I noticed, the director, Richard Fleischer,
who good.
is the son of famous Max Fleischer, who we have all those classic Superman cartoons from.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
And that's still an example, even going way back then, of the Hollywood system and nepotism and what have you. It was a favor. Fleischer actually recommended to Disney, maybe you should let my kid direct it. He's pretty good. And, that's the old school handshake dad deal to get their kid juiced into the door. It pisses people like me off, but who cares? It was made perfectly. And he went on to do other great movies like The Vikings with Kirk Douglas. And the rest is history. He's an excellent director. Yeah. So he was the right choice. Yeah.
Yeah. Just one final thing on the production. Once I finished the film, I went back. I wanted to watch the trailer. I have to admit, the trailer, or any movie trailers from the 1950s or 60s with the narration, was great.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish to some degree that we would have some movies, not all, but some movies do that. Maybe for nostalgia's sake.
Yeah. It's tried and true, and it works. It works. And imagine seeing that as a kid or something in a movie theater. That's your previews, like seeing a preview to Star Wars or something. It's like, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. You're seeing, Kirk Douglas, who's like, I don't know, the Arnold Schwarzenegger of his time, but a way better actor. He with more presence and, the blonde hair, the hero, and then the stark image of Captain Nemo versus Peter Lorre. The cast was amazing. Paul Lucas, who played the professor. A stellar cast. Everybody hit their mark, and everybody played their part to the utmost. You could see it in their faces. It's an awesome, awesome flick.
Well, there's a reason why this won 2 Oscars.
Mm-hmm.
Minor detail. It only won 2 Oscars, but hey ho. So moving forward, kind of in line with the production, let's talk about that squid scene. As I was doing additional research, originally that final fight scene with the giant squid, the monster that they've been searching for, almost, as you mentioned earlier, almost sunk the movie and Disney Productions.
Yes, this was a big deal, this squid scene. Did you happen to, like, I have the big gigantic deluxe Blu-ray or DVD version of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea with all the supplemental materials and documentaries. And what I did not know is they shot that scene twice. Did you know they shot that scene twice?
I did, yeah. And in fact, I had, so when I was doing my preparation for the show, I had stumbled across, because YouTube is beautiful, stumbled actually across the original scene.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad that I watched that after watching the movie, because God, holy hell.
Yeah.
It was bad. But it was because of one line in the original script where it was described that it was, kind of a dark red sky where the scene was taking place, which makes total sense. Obviously Hollywood, wanting to follow the script as it's written. And I'm thrilled that they decided to go against that because it was bad. It was so bad.
Infamously titled The Sunset Squid Fight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. and that would have absolutely killed the entire film. The other interesting thing, and I believe that this is also in that extra featurette, if you will, was Walt Disney was the one who really saved the movie, because at the time it would have cost, if I remember right, about an extra $250,000 to reshoot that scene. Now, in 1954, $250,000 is a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And so Walt Disney goes back to his investors asking for more money, and at the same time, Disneyland is being built, so they're burning through cash like nobody's business.
Yeah.
And the condition that the investors said was they wanted to see what had been shot. I mean, they had already shot, I think, enough of the fight scene as we have it now, and that's what they wanted to see. And if they didn't buy into it, that was it. Movie is done, and I don't think Disney would be as big as it is now.
No, it would have closed the doors.
Yep, it would have been done. I wonder what the world would be like without that.
That's something to contemplate, and all for a big stuffed squid.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Well, and so what's cool is the investors saw that scene, they loved it, end up giving Walt Disney another $1 million to finish the film. So this is a huge win, and as you said, then the rest is history.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny too, watching the sunset squid fight. Of course, it's all wrong. The serenity of it, the beauty of the photography, and you have the squid that's just too visible, the wires hanging. But what I like to watch about it, what I like to look at it when I watch it, is that you see like James Mason, and he's still like the consummate professional actor. He's buying the fact that he has to kill that squid. You still see the acting concentration on his face. He was playing it balls to the wall. It didn't matter. But when you add that, the waves and the rain and the dark clouds and the thunder and lightning to the new fight, the dramaticism is just excelled like tenfold. It's for real.
Yeah.
The sea can kill you, or the squid can kill you. A great sequence.
Oh, and I think at one point there was a couple times where I saw Captain Nemo get pulled under as they're trying to pull him back to the Nautilus, and for a split second, the extras broke character and jumped in with Kirk Douglas to pull him out, and even then it was James Mason still in character, not breaking. He's putting his life on the line here. I mean, he legitimately could have drowned, and still, camera's rolling, show must go on.
And that's old school, man. Yeah. I mean, you don't condone it, but you're playing with water in a movie. Anything can happen. Mm-hmm. And that's the other thing too. The underwater photography, they had to shoot in places where light penetrates the water, versus nowadays you can light underwater. Mm-hmm. And so back then they were shooting in the clearest place they can find so that they can capture the right image, and it worked.
Yeah. That underwater scene was cool for the underwater funeral.
Oh yeah, it's creepy, and it just tells it. It's that launches it. This is going to be something sinister and dark, but majestic at the same time.
Yeah. And could you imagine us like if the movie, and I'm not suggesting that it should be remade, because for the love of God, please don't remake it. I realize that it has since then, but we don't need it now. We can leave this one alone. It's fine. The fact that those underwater suits, I mean, if they were to remake it, at least keep that consistent, because those suits were awesome.
Oh yeah. I mean, the whole idea of Harper Goff's production design, and this is, if you really look at it, they really did kind of a sleek version of steampunk for 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and it worked. They kind of it wasn't 100% steampunk because of the theoretical atomic propelling system. But when you look at the overall look of the bolts and the metal and the wood in a classic way, it's just a beautiful production design. I mean, it's the costumes, everything works out just right. And leave it alone, because to redesign the Nautilus, that's a tall order. Now I know they did like a made-for-TV version in 2006 or 2009.
I thought they did one in 95 as well.
Oh, they may have.
Yeah.
And why? My fear is because Disney's on this remake, relaunch, everything in their catalog thing to keep the studio alive, that they're going to touch this movie. I hope they don't.
Yeah, this is one that if they did, it would cause Kirk Douglas to roll in his grave.
I believe he would come back.
Yeah,
and rightly so.
Yeah. Kirk Douglas's performance singing, fantastic.
Yeah,
I love that song. Absolutely love it. I think I watched that scene like 4 or 5 times after I finished the movie. I went back because that song, I mean, that's Disney having their hand in it.
Yep.
And it's the thing that I loved was it wasn't a full blown musical. It was just that one moment.
Yeah. That's all it needed.
Yep.
And he was that bright source in the movie, wild, untamed, but still, I like how his through character is he was going to do his job. Mm-hmm. He was a harpoonist. That's what he does. And even when he's ready to strike, the Nautilus, not knowing it's a submarine, his whole pose, everything, because he's ready to hit it between the eyes. And granted, if it was a real monster, he probably would have did it, and he would have been the hero of the day. Mm-hmm. But as it turned out, no. New discoveries were made, but his character was purposeful and also completely defiant, which in a sense was the same with James Mason's portrayal of Captain Nemo. In a sense, they both had that defiant streak.
Yeah.
Which kind of was their, even though they hated each other, it was kind of a neat comparison. And a fun one. But Kirk Douglas, I mean, he's the man. He was this is pre-Spartacus, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. This is this made him even bigger than he already was. After this, he wrote his own ticket after this.
Yeah. So would it be safe to say that Captain Nemo maybe saw a lot of himself in Ned Land?
I think so. I mean, even though he thinks he's doing the right thing, he's still tormented by the idea of killing, but it's a political statement. It's an anti-war statement. Mm-hmm. So, and that's what he's about. But still, that's what angers, Ned Land is those are sea mariners like me. Some of those people are just honest people. You can't take it out on everyone. And I think that kind of wakes Nemo up a little bit more than the professor. Mm-hmm. The professor's case of, the world needs this technology to be a better place. Whereas Nemo's like, no, the world's too dumb. The worlds of today can't handle his power.
Yeah.
So he has to keep it on the down low. So those nice little morality aspects, takes it a little deeper.
Mm-hmm. Nemo kind of reminded me a lot of Nikola Tesla from The Prestige.
Right.
Because kind of how he was conducting himself, and, he has this power, and as you said, he understands that the world's not ready for it. And it automatically triggered how David Bowie played as Nikola Tesla in The Prestige. Same thing, preventing, really hesitant to provide Hugh Jackman's character with this power because he understands that the world's not ready for it.
Right. And rightly so. And it's great, it's great how 20,000 Leagues ends. It just says, no, everything that he knows goes with him.
Mm-hmm.
And humanity is basically, it's up to them to figure it out again. It's fun stuff, man.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. Going into this, I was like, okay, I'm not sure what I'm getting myself into. Then I saw Walt Disney's name, and I'm like, okay. You look back at movies from that time period, like Mary Poppins, one of my favorites. Fantastic, different genre, different type of story, but it's the production value that held up, and why I was like, okay, already putting me in a good spot.
Yeah.
Character design, character development, all of that. This movie provided me that complete package. And why I, at the beginning of the show, did not say it's a cult classic. It is a classic. We'll just take the cult part out, because if you truly are a connoisseur of film, then this is a staple film.
Yes, without a doubt. I mean, this is one you'll watch and enjoy. Production value. I mean, the music, the acting, because it's not just that it is a classic. It's a slice of cinema history.
Mm.
And even looking at a movie like this, that's the route I want to go. I want miniatures. I want forced perspective. I want set design. The aspect of green screening everything, CGI. It has its novelty, but really, it's not cinematic.
Yeah.
And people know the difference. Audiences know when they go into a movie and they can see all the CGI and what have you. They know they're watching an animated movie versus a live action movie, no matter what it is. If it's a Marvel movie, whatever, they understand this. But when you look at a movie like this, it puts you at ease. It says, wow, these are men making stuff with their hands.
Yeah.
Talented men and women all over the world making stuff with their hands, and it's being photographed and immortalized in the right way.
Yeah.
And that's what Disney did with all those, even, like you said, Mary Poppins, Bedknobs and Broomsticks,
Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
Chitty Chitty Bang Bang to boot. Yeah, all these really cool movies. They knew what they were doing. And it's kind of funny how this was the catalyst. A non-musical, you can call it a family movie for its time, even though it has extremely dark themes. It's a marvel. This is a true marvel of cinematic history. I'll watch it over and over again, just as a case study, just to learn. There's always something new to learn.
I feel like if anyone is going, studying film, whether it's film history, filmmaking, that this is a required film to watch.
I would put it on the docket easily.
Yeah.
It's right down to how they utilize the CinemaScope with the composition and how everybody's framed and how the camera moves. This is perfection at its best. These guys were spot on for the day. the costume designs. They're, they didn't skimp on this movie. That's why it almost sunk the studio. A $9 million budget in 1954 it's insane. But looking at the daily rushes and what they were doing, okay, even then I would buy into it. Nope, they're doing the right thing, so let's just back this and make it happen.
Yeah.
Great stuff.
Oh, absolutely. So to kind of maybe start working our way towards wrapping it up, if you were to compare this to movies of today, I know the answer to this, and I think everybody else will know the answer to this. Does this movie hold up?
Without a doubt, it holds up. And I think one reason why it holds up, not just because of the great source materials and these classic actors, and it's Disney, is also the time frame of the story. Now, to me, in certain situations nowadays, technology is the killer of creativity in cinema. Now, when I say that, I mean if a computer or smartphones are propelling your story forward, then you're not telling a story. Now, the technology that we have in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, it's the Nautilus and the propulsion system. Mm-hmm. It's true scientific stuff you can touch, feel, taste. That doesn't separate the story. It doesn't make it, in a sense, science fiction, because the next year I think they launched the true Nautilus super submarine with nuclear power, and the naval on the naval side of things, they took that inspiration from a movie. And now we had a protector in the sea. That was our own Nautilus. This kind of technology inspired. And I think having it being in the 1860s, that's still the West. That's the old West in a sense, but on the sea. Mm-hmm. So your technology is what it is for that day. It is steampunkish. It is coal. It's harpoons. It's regular firearms. It's manly man stuff. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Not hiding behind a computer or a smartphone. So does it hold up? Without a doubt, because this truly transforms you or transports you to a different place and a different time. But twofold, 1860s and 1954, just to see how the movie is made and what it's covering, its subject matter. So without a doubt, this is a movie, like if you're making a gigantic Disney movie of today, you look at and study to say, well, how can I do this? So without a doubt, I think it holds up.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I wholeheartedly agree. As I had mentioned, this is one that if you're studying film, whether you're going into it to make it a career, that this is what you need to kind of base your concepts on, just with how it was shot, how the screenplay is, all of it. If you want a complete package, this is it. And just, we could honestly go on and on and on about how great this movie is. That squid, though, on the reshoot, terrifying.
It was. It worked out. That was, as a kid, it was like, wow, that's an adventure, the ultimate adventure. Fight a big squid, which is insane, but even the miniatures, grabbing onto the Nautilus and they're trying to electrify it. It's chasing them. There's a squid chase in this movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's chasing the Nautilus. And every aspect of that action is well paced. It isn't just cut, lasers flying, everything blowing up. It's like, okay, it's very simple. They're trying to get away from this gigantic squid, and then they have to go out and physically fight it. You break it down to its basics. Once again, the technology failed. The electricity didn't work. They blew their circuits. They couldn't stay underwater. They had to get up onto the surface, and then they just whip out the axes and the harpoons to go chop this thing up. And it's just
as you said, it's manly stuff.
oh yeah, it's a manly man thing, and it's just they're getting down to business. This is what we need to break out. What does he say? Break out the harpoons and axes, and the whole crew is just on it.
Yeah,
and they fight. It's really cool.
Well, and the other maybe the other aspect when this movie was made, there was no social media. There was nothing like, hey, here's the behind the scenes stuff during production. I mean, we've seen that with, we're seeing it now with the filming of the Batman with Robert Pattinson. We're seeing all these leaked photos, if you will. It's kind of taking the magic out of it. We didn't have to worry about that with this.
Yeah, the downfall of the new era and the whole concept of like even the new bat suit, whatever it is, what it is. But looking at it, I understand, well, wait a second. We're not seeing it in its cinematic value yet.
And that's a stunt double too.
Yeah, this ain't the real deal. His cape hasn't been CGI'd in. We don't see what they're going to do with it's going to probably be shot on HD. I mean, all the other Warner Brother DC movies were shot on film. I hope this one is shot on film. We won't get to see the mood. We won't get to see the texture and the saturation.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of a bummer. But a handful of people are outraged. Who cares? To me, it's like I saw the pictures and I put it out of my mind. Well, this ain't the real thing yet. Yeah. Just like if you're on the set watching them shoot the squid scene, that's a little different. Because once again, it's live action, and you have the lighting, and you have the rain and the waves, and you can look at the set piece and go, "This is really cool. This is really cool."
Now that's if we're going off of the squid scene as we know it, not the sunset squid.
Oh, the sunset squid is terrible. It's. I was amazed when I saw that years ago. I was like, "What? They shot it twice?" And then I was like, oh, wow, they did the right thing, man. They did the right thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's do this. And because it's just the two of us, what we'll do is we'll rate what we think. And then for the final rating, I think let's include what we get on the poll.
All right.
So for all of you listening, make sure to go to Twitter at Cinema Crusaders. Vote on this because you will have an impact on the rating of this movie for this particular episode. So Lance, out of 10, what would you rate 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea at?
I would have to give it a 10. I mean, I would have given it a 10 in 54 if I was alive. I'm going to give it a 10 now because it's a masterpiece. This is a true cinematic masterpiece done the right way. A great adaptation, great acting, great script, great production design. I mean, great soundtrack. Overall, you look at this movie and it makes me envious. This is what cinema should be. Mm-hmm. So I'm giving it a 10.
Okay. I would give it a 9.5. Just little nuances, specifically with the costumes. Again, I realized it was the time, but I struggled with how pristine their outfits looked. I mean, you're in a submarine. It's not the cleanest thing unless you're in Captain Nemo's quarters. Then, of course, that shit's going to be clean. But just kind of that, there should be a little more grunge. I mean, if you're going to have that steampunkish look, there needs to be a little bit more grunge everywhere else. Kind of a weird nuance of mine, but something that constantly stuck out in my head as I was watching this. So I'm going to give it a 9.5. I can't do a solid point off. So 9.5 out of 10 for me.
And on the flip side of the costuming, one of the reason why I'm giving it a 10 is because that smoking jacket James Mason's wearing, that red velvet, that is so wicked. I want it so bad. I'm saying right now, that's, on the costume side, man, an amazing choice of costuming. That was just wow.
Captain Nemo's character was perfect in every way, shape, and form. It was just everybody else. There was just those little nuances with the costuming that I was like,
And it's always a thing in film. It's always a thing where people are like, things are a little bit too pristine or too clean or what have you. And it's like, well, yeah, but understand that you're laying down the film.
Yeah.
You kind of want to lean it towards that clean look, because in a sense, I've seen movies at times when they really over grunge it. Mm-hmm. And you actually lose some of the actor in that grunge. It's like, well, I got an actor here. I'm actually showing somebody. So let's tone it down just a little bit, and let's focus on them primarily, because there is a person in those costumes. You know what I mean?
I mean, a little bit more grunge. I mean, not over the top, but just a little bit. I mean, like what they did in Mary Poppins with the rooftop scene, with the chimney sweeps. Perfect.
Right.
That was like the perfect amount of grunge for that scene. If they applied that sort of concept here, I realized this took place before Mary Poppins. Then I would have, been absolutely and totally sold. But just that little nuance, that's where I was like, eh.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's fine. I mean, 9.5, excellent.
Yeah, it's honestly exactly how I felt.
Yeah,
when I was done with it. So.
Yeah, and I think it's either way, 9.5, 10. It's well deserved. And on a kind of a fun side note, if you're interested, to tack something on to 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Mysterious Island, 1961. Herbert Lom plays an amazing Captain Nemo. Now, this is the prequel to 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. This is where they actually it's a civil war. It takes place during the Civil War, and soldiers get trapped on a balloon, and they land on the mysterious island. And this is where the Nautilus is being built. This is where Captain Nemo's getting his legs. Yeah, it's a fun movie. And it has like the Ray Harryhausen stuff. They're fighting big gigantic crabs and monsters. They have to get along, even though it's the North versus the South. And once again, Nemo's trying to make his point, like, you guys are fighting and killing each other. You're not worth having my technology. Mm-hmm. It's a another great version of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, but the prequel. It's fun. That's a nice little side note. I wanted to mention it because I think Herbert Lom did Captain Nemo justice as well. But we're always going to think James Mason. But Herbert Lom, he did a good job. So it's just something for fun if people want to look it up. If you're a 20,000 Leagues fan, look up Mysterious Island. It's a great flick.
Do it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Well, Lance, this has been fun. I've thoroughly enjoyed this, and I'm excited to see how the audience reacts as well, because their votes will have a huge impact on the overall rating of the movie. So,
yeah, it's been fun. This is a great thing to talk about. This is a great thing to talk about. I had a great time.
Awesome. Well, that's going to be it for Cinema Crusaders. Make sure to check us out on undercovercapes.com for all of your pop culture needs. I am your host, Random Dude Josh, and we will catch you guys next time.
See you later.